It's an honor and privilege to have this conversation and spend some time with you. Your accomplishments over the last 35 years are quite extraordinary. Welcome, welcome to the African Women in Law Judicial Legacy Project.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Well, we're going to talk about all of those enormous accomplishments that you have, but first, I want to start at the beginning with your parents and your education. What inspired you? What has carried you to such great heights that you learned as a child and with your parents?
Well, it was very encouraging growing up with my parents, my dad being a pharmacist and my mom being a teacher. And the urge was there to do well in school, get good results, and that just inspired me, really. And from the start, I've always wanted to excel, put it that way.
And they taught you never to give up, right?
Yes, they did. Especially my mom. She was one person who would say, if you try and you don't succeed, try and try again. So that was my, mantra, sort of. I always thought about it, and then she would use the ladder as an illustration, and she would say, when you start climbing the rungs of the ladder and you slip, it will be easier for you to pick up yourself and move up than allow yourself to just slide down, So that really encouraged me and got me going.
And stuck with you, and you became the head girl at your high school. And ultimately, you got a scholarship, a bachelor's degree with honors. You became a graduate teacher. Why did you choose teaching? That's something that you and I have in common, because I taught in the public schools in Detroit before I studied law. Why did you choose teaching?
Because I had just come fresh from Frobe College, and I thought I'd gathered a lot of information which I wanted to impart to students. And I think I thought I could make it in the teaching field. But it's one thing to be desirous of doing something, and I don't know whether you've got that feeling, but you are never satisfied. It's as if I'm doing this, but really this is not what I want to do. So in school, I'd been fascinated by law. I remember I used to take my pocket money and buy these novels on crime and fiction, and I would be trying to solve the problems even after I've finished reading the book, and I'll be thinking, okay, if this one had done this, maybe this would not have happened, So I just loved law. So when I got into the teaching field, I did it for 3 years. And then the opportunity came for me to do my master's in education. So the whole thing is that we had British Council scholarships, but it was what they called departmental scholarships. I was in the teaching field, so I tried to pull a fast one. So I took 2 application forms. I filled one for Masters in Education, and I filled the second one for LLB Law. And then I got this call. My principal called me to the office and said, "You are wanted at the establishment secretary's office." And I was thinking, what have I done, When I got there, she said to me, "Listen, I want you to be honest. I've got 2 application forms from you, but unfortunately, it's only 1 scholarship coming from the British Council, and they cannot sponsor you for both. So you have to decide now and here, what do you actually want to do?" So she said, "But there are conditions attached, but make your choice first." So I thought about it, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is it. This is your last chance, maybe. So I just said, I really want to do the LLB degree program. Then she now removed the 2 forms, and she said to me, if you had selected the education program, you would have gone in September. This was in 1979. And she said, but because you haven't selected the education program, I now have to tell you what is attached to the LLB program that you've selected. She said, you are working for the Ministry of Education. So there is no way the British Council is going to support you and sponsor you for law, because they train you to come back and go into the field that you have left. But when you come back, you are bonded to serve in that department for at least 3 years. So she said, now that you've selected LLB, I can understand this is what you want to do, but it means you cannot travel this year. But what I would do for you is I would ask the Ministry of Education to transfer you to the Attorney General's chambers for you to work in the department for a year. And then I can assure you that in 1980, come September, we would send you. And that's what I did. So it was a sacrifice for 1 year, but the way I saw it, let me just do the sacrifice for a year, and then this would just mold the rest of my years, you know. And that is how I got the scholarship in 1980.
So we can't always get what we want when we want it, but we have to have patience. True. Right? Patience.
Yes, sacrifices have to be made here and there.
Sacrifices have to be made. Yes. And so exactly. you then got an LLB with honors from the University of Wales. Yes. And I want to talk now about your early legal career, because after you left Wales, you got back to Gambia and you became a magistrate. I imagine you were among one of the first women magistrates in Gambia.
Indeed, I was.
What was that like?
It was interesting. It was a bit challenging because obviously, as you would know, what you learn in university, when it comes to applying it, it's different. You know, so it was like the practical side of civil procedure and criminal procedure. You know, so it was like learning all over again, because you cannot take your textbooks in with you. So it's a practical aspect.
Yeah, that would not look good for the magistrate to be looking in the textbook.
Not at all. So it meant preparing overnight. You know, I used to ask for my case files, you know, I would read up and then, you know, be au fait with what's happening, because it was more of police prosecutors who were not as good as the public prosecutors in the Attorney General's chambers. So most of the time you did not descend into the arena to help, but you have to be careful because you have an accused person who is undefended, he doesn't know his rights, and you have a police prosecutor who is messing everything up. All he wants is to be able to say, I've got a conviction. So it was quite challenging, but it was good.
It was good. So you cut your teeth on that and learn that balance of the role of the judiciary, because it is very, very difficult, as you said. And I assume, like in many countries in Africa, still most criminal defendants are unrepresented.
Yes.
That's still true in Gambia?
Yes, you know, they are unrepresented because they cannot afford lawyers' fees. And unlike other jurisdictions where you have pro bono lawyers, we don't have that in Gambia unless it's a case which maybe is of high significance and it has some political ring to it, and then you'll have pro bono lawyers who just want to take it up, you know, make their name, so to say, or, you know, make sure that they defend. But for ordinary criminals, you know, for petty crimes, you know, they were undefended. So you had to really read out and explain to them for them to know, because sometimes they would come and, you know, when you ask them to enter their plea, they wouldn't know what to say. So in those cases, you just enter a plea of not guilty and take it up from there, you know, and invariably in the end, you might find them not guilty because maybe they would have said guilty, not understanding the law. So it was quite challenging. It was quite challenging.
And so you did that for 5 years, and then you were called to the bar after going to a Nigerian law school, and you made history shortly thereafter, becoming the first woman on the High Court of Gambia. So what was that like, to be the first?
The first Gambian female High Court judge. It was because this was a government of the former president. And I think he just wanted to make a difference. So he started appointing a lot of females in different ministries. You have female Minister of Education, female Attorney General, you know, then it now came to the judiciary. And I was approached and asked to send in my CV. And that's how I became the very first female High Court judge in the Gambia. And so,
sorry, go ahead.
Yes, and the president and his government, they were very happy about it because they had made waves, you know, getting the first female.
So that was your early legal career, which we've been talking about, becoming your magistrate and then a member of the bar and then on the high court. So how were you received by the men on the high court, the other male justices?
They were very supportive. You know, they were very supportive, and they threw questions now and again, and it depended on the approach and the response. And when they saw that I was, you know, up to it, then the respect was there because it was a new thing, but they were very supportive, definitely.
So can you talk to us about allies and mentors? Because the way you ended up, you know, it was crucial that your teacher talked about the LLB versus the master's in education and created opportunities for you. How important have mentors been in your life in that early career?
Very important, because when I finished from the Nigerian law school and I was called to the bar, I was attached to one of the top lawyers in the Gambia, and he was a great mentor. He was a great mentor. He was very harsh because I remember he would now say to me, do this draft. Let me get a draft on this and do the research on this. And I would work all night and I would draft my statement of claim or statement of defense, whatever it was. And the first day I got a shock because he just said, you know what? This is fit for the bin because I won't even look at it because you know, he said to me, the affidavit, I remember his words, when you do an affidavit, it has to be meaty, it has to be fleshy. Go and flesh this up because you are telling the story. He says your affidavit is so dry, those were his words. He said, because whoever, you know what you want to say, but if you haven't put it down on paper and you haven't expressed yourself, you know, the judge wouldn't know, or the other lawyer wouldn't know what you're trying to say, you know. So he really was really tough. And the interesting thing is when I was made a judge and on my enrollment or appointment, they had a small session for me to meet the bar, and it was there. And then I now, in my speech, I said, I've got a message for a particular lawyer here. I want to tell him that if his briefs are not up to standard, if they are not meaty or fleshy enough, they'll find their way to be beat. And he said, that's me.
So,
yeah,
so you took his advice seriously. That advice has helped you throughout your career. And I can see one of the ways that you handled the hard work and criticism was with a sense of humor. Yes. How important has that been in your career, having that sense of humor?
It is important because the way I see it, the work goes on. I think when I deliver a judgment, when I read the judgment and I come to the last full stop, that's it. Because especially when you're in the first tier of the courts, in the high court, it has to go on appeal. So you might think you've written such a wonderful, sound judgment, which might be overturned on appeal or upheld. So if you go home and you start thinking about it, doing a post-mortem on that judgment, you know, want to give yourself credit as to what you've done, I think, you know, it's just headache. So my own thing is I do it, give it my utmost, give it my best, and go to sleep. You know, I remember what my sister said to me, how can you sleep after you've sent some people to jail? I said, it's just a job. It's like a surgeon. A surgeon would cut somebody up, and if the person unfortunately dies on the operating table, that doesn't stop him from moving on to the next operation. The job goes on, you know? So with that sense of humor and appreciating everything and remembering that life goes on, it's not just work and no play, because I have had a family as well, 2 young kids to bring up, a husband to look after. It wasn't easy. So it was like juggling everything. So the best way was to just, you know, be humorous. People tell me that I smile all the time, I laugh all the time. It doesn't mean I don't have problems, you know, but
yeah, Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you don't take your work seriously, very
Definitely.
seriously, because that hard work ethic is just a part of your DNA. It's a part of your
Definitely.
DNA. It's like when I took my job as a judge, because I started as a trial judge and then I was on the Court of Appeals, and I saw so many judges and they had so many illnesses and so many problems. I decided I would do just like you, do my very best, take the time I needed to make a decision, and then go to sleep. And I said I was not going to let the job turn my hair snow white, because
Exactly.
you can't, you have to put things in perspective. So what advice do you have for other women? You've given us some advice to use a sense of humor, to work hard, to be focused, to do your very best. Any other advice for women who might aspire to join the judiciary?
Yes, to be determined and to have confidence in yourself. Because no matter what you do, if you lack confidence, then you cannot make it. When you pick up a case file, sometimes when you have a case file and you look at it on the appellate level and you're thinking, oh my God, so many pages. How am I going to get through all these pages? How am I going to look at this? If you give up at the beginning, it means you're not going to get a good judgment, But for me, it is that nothing is impossible so long as you put your mind to it and just work hard. So I would say, in addition to all what you've listed, I think that self-confidence really matters.
You stood out like a sore thumb because you were an African and you were alone.
And there was a vacancy in the Commonwealth Secretariat, and they wanted somebody to go to Swaziland.
So, position. We've made a lot of accomplishments, and but we are still dealing with male chauvinism.